I've got 6 years of yield maps and a stack of soil tests, and they've never once been put in the same place. So I paired every soil sample to the yield on its own acre. Here's what I did, and here's what actually fell out. So we'll start with the mess. I get combine exports in one format and soil tests in another format, and the field changes crops every year. Every farmer watching this has the exact same stuff. None of it ever gets linked together, and that's the problem. I actually never saw what my data showed. Part of the issue putting these things together is that the soil sample is a point, and that the yield map is actually just like a big grid. Um, it's more like a cloud of yield. And so what I did to match these correctly is I pulled the acre around each soil sample as my reference. That's about 120 feet radius or so. And this decision is what the entire project rests on. I had to make sure to get that right, otherwise everything else would be noise. Then I went ahead and actually cleaned up the data. So stationary combine passes got cleaned out. The 99th and the first percentile got trimmed, and I filtered everything to the median to kill the harvest striping that happens when you're going back and forth in the field. The next thing, when I wanted to compare my yield versus my actual soil tests, was that corn yields in the 200s and beans yield like 50, 60, or 70. So what I did was I turned it into a percentage of its own field year median. Now a 2021 corn acre and a 2024 bean acre sit on the same axis. So I've got 52 full harvests to work with instead of just a handful for each data set. So when it comes to what I actually found, all the data across 9 fields, I found hardly any correlations. All the 19 parameters were basically just flat. Let me show you here. So organic matter versus yield was probably one of the biggest trend lines. You can see it goes from about 98% up to a little over 100%, from 2% to 5.5% organic matter. If we scroll down, we can look at, you know, most of them don't have that big, most of them are flat. You can see, I mean, pH relatively flat to down, phosphorus pretty flat, potassium flat, calcium, once again, I mean, if we look over here at calcium, it's flat to down. And so what I ended up finding is not what usually the co-op tells you, which is, oh, the more nutrients you have, the more yield you get in general. I found that it actually must not have been the limiting factor because it was pretty flat. Now, I also had growing season precip per field, and there's a pretty clear trend here that the more water you get, generally the better it is. I also mapped GDDs. There's a slight downtrend. That probably just means that you got less rain in the year because rain brings in cooler temps. So that's probably why that is. As far as what did best, the poorly drained a lot of the time was actually doing better than the well drained, and that's probably because most of this ground is well tiled. So poorly drained has the best the best nutrients and the best and most consistent moisture. Um, Say here, though, in this data set, we wanted to look at how calcium did for different fields. We could drop down into this per field breakdown and see that on Home South, calcium actually correlated well with yield, but on 94 Dirksen, it did not. It actually, the higher the calcium, the lower the yield. Not by very much, though, and it might look like a lot here. It's really not that much. If we go down here, we can look for any significant correlations here. Basically, that means that it matters and it's not just noise. If we look through all of them, there's literally none when you average corn and soybeans together. So I did all this data, put it all together, and I basically got no result for that when you look at the entire data set. I mean, here's elevation Hilltops did slightly worse, the elevation, slightly negatively correlated, but not even that much. And you can see it usually cancels out. The hilltops or the high flatlands do really well on 66 hill coast, but North Place hilltops do not do well. I know that from personal experience. Could have told you that. Now, if we went into the data a little differently, and we said we want to go for only corn, um, then we can look and see if there's any significant correlations for corn. There actually are 0 significant correlations for corn. Well, I guess I could be wrong. I guess pH is a somewhat significant correlation, but still, it's like the lower pH end of things is getting you like 102%, and this is 98%. Realistically, that's like 2 to 3 bushels an acre. Still could be noise. Not finding anything crazy. I mean, if we just go ahead and look at all the charts down here in a big view, there's not much. Not much as far as a line. I mean, potassium looks like it has a little bit of a tilt to it. But yeah, it's hardly anything. So basically, when we look at the slope of all these things, 0, everything is really the net effect, especially when you combine everything together. But when you look at, say, potassium by field, you can see that it varies. And usually they cancel out to form a straight line. If we look at, from just one field, say we look at one field, well, we can see here that at 66 hill coasts, a bit more of a trend actually starts to emerge. And say we look at organic matter on 66 hill coasts, the lines really start to come out a little more. When I was looking through this, I did hit a problem. Some of the soil tests were pulled after the harvest, and that they're paired to, and some were pulled before. So I did build a switch so we can see if that really affects things. To be fair, it definitely does affect things. But honestly, this is probably noise. So if we click onto all fields here, let's see if this really makes a difference. So pH versus relative yield. So we've got the harvest before the test and the harvest after the test, and both. And it even, like, you can see that it has a slightly positive correlation here, slightly negative here. Guess what? They end up canceling out. And so it looks like you just got to go on a field by field level, honestly, though. I was thinking this might explain why and there wasn't a lot of signal coming out of it, but it honestly didn't give me an answer. So what I've mostly pulled out of this is that I'm going to stop paying the co-op to do all this analysis and do it myself, and I'm finding out that it really needs to be on a field by field basis. That's just my opinion. And honestly, this is worth knowing. If the soil test isn't actually predicting the yield on your ground, like it really isn't on mine that much, that's not really a dead end. It just means that you have to go field by field and see what's actually going on, not just assume that just because your phosphorus levels are higher, you're going to get more yield. So this is the kind of thing that I do. Take farm data when it's just sitting in a folder doing nothing and try to pull the answers out of it. That's just one of the things that I do. If you've got field maps and soil tests that don't talk to each other, what would you want to know from them? That's what I'm trying to work on next. And so if there's anything that I should have built into this dashboard that I'm not considering, let me know and I'll add it. I'm always looking for suggestions.